It is great news for Hindus and Buddhists in India. In just 2 months, they will be able to trek to Mount Kailash from the Indian territory.
Mount Kailash rises from the Tibetan plateau, looking almost too perfect to be real. For centuries, people have called it sacred, untouchable, even forbidden. But recent observations are making its mystery deeper than ever. Patterns along its surface appear less like random geology and more like design. Instruments at its base record strange disturbances, and when researchers compared maps, they noticed something absolutely shocking. Kailash aligns with ancient sites thousands of miles apart. The closer you look, the less it feels like stone and ice, and the more it feels like a secret hidden in plain sight. So what secrets has this mountain been hiding for such a long time? Let's find out.
The unclimbable mountain. Most mountains stop people with ice, altitude, and exhaustion. Mount Kailash does something different. Those who have gone toward it often say the problem isn't physical strength or technical skill. It's the feeling that something pushes back long before the climb truly begins. Climbers describe it as resistance that no rope, training, or equipment can prepare you for. One of the earliest people to say this openly was British mountaineer Hugh Rutledge. In 1926, after studying the mountain firsthand, he called it utterly unclimbable. This wasn't about fear at all. Rutledge had years of experience on harsh and dangerous peaks, yet Kailash left him with the conviction that it could not and should not be conquered. What mattered wasn't steepness or weather, it was the sense that the mountain itself set limits. Decades later, the pattern continued. In 2001, a rare permit was granted to a Spanish climbing team. The mountain's sacred status usually keeps climbers away, so expectations were high. But just before the expedition began, the team suddenly abandoned the plan. Reports described hallucinations, sudden sickness, and a deep, overwhelming fear that none of them could explain. These were skilled mountaineers, yet something happened that made them retreat before even touching the ascent routes. Other attempts went further and ended more disturbingly. Members of a scientific group once considered climbing and were warned by a Tibetan Lama to leave the mountain alone. They listened and returned home. Within a year or two, all 4 were dead. Russian climber Sergei Chistakov described a similar experience in personal terms. As he approached the mountain, he felt the expected effects of altitude, but mentally something felt wrong. His heart raced without reason. A single thought repeated itself in his mind. He did not belong there. Relief only came when he turned around. He later said it felt as though the mountain had rejected him and that leaving felt like being allowed to breathe again. What stands out in nearly every account is not panic, but clarity. People don't flee in chaos, they stop, they reassess, and when they turn away, many describe a strange sense of calm, even gratitude, as if retreat itself were the correct decision all along. The closer people get, the narrower their thinking becomes, looping back on fear and doubt until moving forward no longer feels possible. In those moments, turning back doesn't feel like failure, it feels like permission. No ropes snap, no cliffs collapse. The decision happens quietly inside the mind, where resistance feels absolute and strangely final. And once made, that decision rarely feels regretted. It simply feels necessary, inevitable, and accepted.
If you liked this video, ensure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because we will be uploading more crazy stories like this one in the coming weeks.
The strange time pattern, stories from Mount Kailash, do not stop with fear or retreat. Some accounts go further, describing something deeply unsettling, time itself behaving incorrectly near the mountain. These reports are not told loudly or dramatically. They are usually shared in a subdued tone, almost reluctantly, as if the speakers are unsure how to explain what they experienced without sounding unreasonable. The most common claim involves rapid physical changes. Members of a Russian scientific expedition in the late 1990s reported encountering Siberian climbers who returned from the slopes looking drastically older than when they left. Hair that had been dark turned gray within days. Beards and fingernails appeared longer than should have been possible in such a short period. Faces showed deep lines and sagging skin as if years had passed instead of hours. Normally, the human body cannot change this way. Hair growth follows predictable cycles. Nail growth is slow and measurable. Aging is cumulative, not sudden. That is what makes these accounts so disturbing. Observers insisted these changes were not subtle. Some of the individuals who reported the most extreme aging did not live long afterward. Within a few years, they died of conditions associated with advanced age, despite having been young and healthy before their trip. There was only the shared detail of time spent near the mountain. Explanations have been offered, but none settled the unease. Extreme altitude can stress the body, altering appearance temporarily through dehydration, oxygen deprivation, and weight loss. Severe fear can change perception, making people appear older in moments of crisis. What makes the idea more unsettling is how locals speak of the area. Tibetan traditions warn that Mount Kailash exists outside ordinary time. Pilgrims believe that a single circuit around its base can erase a lifetime of wrongdoing, while repeated circuits can free a soul entirely from the cycle of rebirth. In this belief, time near the mountain does not flow normally. It accelerates, compresses, or transforms. Whether these stories describe physical change, psychological stress, or something stranger remains unknown. What is clear is that those who return often describe a sense that something was taken from them. Not energy, not health, but time, hours, years, or futures they cannot clearly define. The mountain does not announce this exchange. It simply allows people to leave altered, carrying evidence on their bodies and faces that something fundamental shifted while they were there. And if time can behave differently near Kailash, then fear and retreat begin to look less mysterious. Perhaps the mountain is not dangerous because of what it does, but because of what it changes. That possibility alone is enough to make even skeptics pause before dismissing every account entirely.
If you liked this video, ensure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because we will be uploading more crazy stories like this one in the coming weeks.
The machine failures. The first signs are often small. Compasses, the most basic tools in navigation, stop behaving predictably. Trekkers have reported needles spinning without settling, pointing nowhere meaningful. Others describe compasses locking in place, refusing to respond at all. In a landscape where landmarks repeat and weather shifts quickly, that loss of orientation is more than an inconvenience. It removes certainty. Higher above the mountain, the pattern continues. Pilots flying regional routes have long noted that aircraft are not permitted to pass directly over the peak. Officially, the region is restricted airspace, but the reason is rarely discussed in detail. Unofficially, stories circulate of instruments giving conflicting readings, sudden signal loss, and unexplained turbulence. Modern aircraft rely on layers of redundant systems. For multiple sensors to misbehave simultaneously is unusual. Drones add another layer to the puzzle. In recent years, researchers and documentarians have attempted to fly unmanned aerial vehicles near the slopes. Many never made it far. Some lost signal and dropped straight from the sky. Others returned garbled footage before shutting down entirely. Batteries drained faster than expected. Stabilization systems failed without warning. Engineers examining the devices afterward often found no obvious damage. Then there is the weather. Storms near Kailash are described as abrupt rather than gradual. Clear skies can collapse into blinding whiteouts in minutes. Snow falls so thick it erases depth and distance. What ties these failures together is loss of control. Navigation depends on trust. Pilots trust instruments, climbers trust tools. When those systems stop responding, the environment takes over completely. There is no villain, no visible threat, only the sense that something fundamental has shifted against you. Skeptics point to geology. Magnetic anomalies exist in many parts of the world. High-altitude weather is famously unpredictable. Electronics behave poorly in cold, thin air. All of this is true, yet in most places these effects are sporadic. Near Kailash, they appear layered and persistent. When machines stop making sense, people retreat faster. A spinning compass does not inspire debate. A grounded drone does not argue. These failures cut through belief and disbelief alike. The mountain does not need to frighten anyone. It only needs to disrupt the tools humans rely on to feel in control. And once that control is gone, the decision to leave becomes simple. Whatever is happening there does not require belief to be effective. It only requires proximity. The strange lakes. Manasarovar is calm, fresh, and reflective, a mirror that holds the sky without complaint. Even at extreme altitude, when other waters lock into ice, Manasarovar resists freezing, holding a smooth surface while winds pass overhead. Beside it lies Rakshastal, restless and saline, its water constantly disturbed as if something below refuses stillness. Travelers say standing between them feels like stepping across an unseen boundary. At night, the calm lake becomes stranger. Witnesses describe small points of light crossing the surface, drifting independently rather than reflecting stars. The water itself changes color from day to day, moving through blues, greens, and occasional red hues. But for those present, the effect feels deliberate, as though the lake responds to something unseen. Paths around the lakes add to the unease. Pilgrims walking the ritual circuit speak of trails fading and reappearing, routes that seem solid one day and absent the next. The land offers no clear mistake, no collapse or erosion, only a quiet refusal to remain consistent. Orientation dissolves slowly, encouraging doubt rather than panic. As sunlight lowers across the southern face of the mountain, shadow patterns briefly align into recognizable forms. Lines stretch across snow and stone, intersecting at clean angles before breaking apart again. For believers, these moments carry symbolism. For skeptics, they remain coincidental and light. Either way, the experience leaves a mark. The lakes do not threaten. They contrast side by side. They present a balance that refuses blending. Calm does not tame chaos. Freshness does not soften salt. Whatever rules govern this place allow contradiction to exist without resolution. And standing there, watching one surface remain still while the other churns, it becomes difficult to decide which behavior is normal. The water does not answer questions. It reflects them quietly until observers leave with more uncertainty than they brought. People linger here longer than planned, not because it feels welcoming, but because leaving feels unresolved. Photographs rarely match memory. Sounds travel oddly across the surface, arriving late or distorted. Even silence feels layered, as if echoes never fully fade. When visitors finally walk away, they carry no single explanation. The lakes remain behind them, unchanged and opposed, insisting that contradiction can be, and understanding is not required for something to persist.
The central axis. For many cultures, Mount Kailash is not defined by height or shape, but by position. It is believed to stand at the center, not of a map, but of meaning.
Ancient traditions describe it as the point where worlds meet, a vertical axis connecting what is above, what is below, and what lies in between. In this view, Kailash is not something you approach for conquest, it is something you acknowledge. This idea appears repeatedly across religions that otherwise share little in common. In Hindu belief, the mountain is the earthly home of Shiva, the force of destruction and renewal. He is not imagined as ruling from afar, but as seated in stillness at the summit. Buddhism sees the mountain as the mandala of Demchok, a symbol of ultimate bliss and enlightenment. In the Jain tradition, it is the site where their first teacher attained liberation. Each interpretation differs, yet all agree on one point. This place anchors something greater. Geography reinforces the symbolism. 4 major rivers of Asia trace their origins to the region around Kailash, flowing outward in different directions. To pilgrims, this is not coincidence. It makes the mountain a source, feeding life far beyond its immediate surroundings. Maps turn myth into structure. Water becomes a quiet confirmation. Some describe Kailash as the crown of the planet, borrowing imagery from meditative traditions. If Earth has focal points, this would be one where energy concentrates rather than moves. Whether understood spiritually or symbolically, the logic is the same. Standing before the mountain, it becomes clear why explanations falter. Malfunctioning tools, distorted time, strange geography, and improbable shape all point back here, not to a single cause, but to a shared intuition. This place marks a boundary, not one enforced, loud, but one quietly respected. The mountain does not demand belief, it only persists unmoved while everything else circles around it. Mount Kailash has revealed just enough to remind us how little we truly understand. So here's the question for you. Is Mount Kailash simply a natural wonder shaped by coincidence and culture, or is something deeper happening there? Something we still don't have the language to describe? Let me know what you think about this in the comments below.
If you liked this video, ensure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because we will be uploading more crazy stories like this one in the coming weeks.